Hello and welcome to this episode of the Game Dev London podcast. My name is Stuart De Ville, host and CEO of Game Dev Local. And with me today I have my special guest, Tom Pigott, who is founder and CEO of Ludo.ai. And today we're going to be talking about AI in games quite broadly, but we'll also be talking about the stuff that Tom is doing with AI in and around games. Hey Tom, how are you doing?
Excellent, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Perfect. It's great to have you here. So let's start with the big question, shall we? What is Ludo?
Very good question. Yeah, Ludo is a company we founded in 2020. We were actually previously a gaming studio, and then I met my co-founder, who has a PhD in AI, and we both had an interest at the time on seeing what the models that were currently out there in 2019, 2020 could possibly be applied towards game development. And so we started down that path fairly early, or earlier than a lot of the companies, in focusing on trying to develop AI tools to give ourselves a competitive advantage in the game development space. And we were primarily mobile dev studio focused on hyper casual style games. And what we realized, or came to the conclusion, both was, making hit games is certainly a challenge. And also there was potentially a larger opportunity to develop AI tools as a business for other studios. And so we actually sort of pivoted towards that path because we saw that it was going to have a huge impact. And we began developing where we could tools that would allow for ideation and image generation, et cetera, which we can discuss. So Ludo.ai is really a SaaS platform, AI powered tools for game developers and studios.
Okay, cool. It's kind of a similar story to Discord, how they obviously were a studio trying to make games, then they created Discord as their personalized comms situation, and then they're like, oh, I wonder if other people could find this useful. And we know that
I think also possibly Slack. There was another similar type story where, the internal comms ended up being the primary product and platform. So we hope it'll be a similar type of
path. So how do you feel AI tools currently impact game development? Obviously, there's a lot of talk about AI tools, and we've seen some early adopters in games. But obviously, there's also a lot of scaremongering. Where do you see their potential for growth for studios?
Well, obviously, we think there's a huge potential for studios to embrace the AI tools that are currently out there and those that are certainly going to be coming down the road. The biggest, I would say, one of the biggest misperceptions, at least for people who have not tested out the tools, is thinking that the AI can essentially develop the game for them entirely, and that will never really be the case. You're always going to want and have the human plus AI team, and that'll help with, obviously the humans are the ones who are deciding if it's fun and curating, editing, etc. But in the current landscape, an area we're focused on primarily is pre-development, and that entails all of the market trends, research, ideation. If you come to our site with a concept already in mind, or you're just wanting to start a new game development, we have a complete suite of tools that helps you design game document, generate images, generate concept art, even some video, ultimately some scripts. So there's a lot that goes into the whole process of getting your game off to a good start. And then we are not a game engine, to be clear. So ultimately, you'll as a developer choose a game engine, Unity or Godot or something, and go from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that sounds like really that's kind of the perfect place for AI to be involved is in that process before you even get to your game engine. I think actually indie studios, especially like new startup studios, it's one of the things that because access to these tools are so readily available, because someone could pick up Unity tomorrow, jump in, they tend to start straight away with like, I have this kind of vague idea, and they start building it, which is cool that we can do that. But a lot of people then just take that and run with it without even doing any of the pre-development, any of the stuff that we do to make sure that, like, is the idea good? Is there space in the market for it? So yeah, it sounds like a perfect space. Perfect.
Yeah, it's the old measure twice, cut once type of scenario, right? You end up regretting, and certainly we've had many conversations with indie studios and solo devs and hobbyists where they said, "Yeah, I was excited about this concept, and just started prototyping it without really doing any market research, and realized that that obviously that concept was already very popular, or there was multiple versions of it, et cetera." So yeah, we try and help the developer gain a lot of confidence with the trends and the research and the competitive analysis ahead of time, and allowing them to generate something and create a variety of different prototypes, knowing that not all of them are going to work.
Do you have any examples at the moment of how AI tools have enhanced the creative process in game development?
How they have enhanced, pardon me?
The creative process.
Oh yeah, I mean, sure. Like, well, for example, traditionally, right, brainstorming around a new game concept has been a lot of people sitting in a room and sticky notes on the whiteboard, so to speak, and looking maybe for inspiration from social media, et cetera. What are TikTok trends? What are mechanics that are interesting? All of which is great, and that's often how games have been built, taken from outside world experiences or similarities, and or looking at versions of existing games and how to make a twist on it. I think what the AI tools, what Ludo offers, is an acceleration of that process, as well as a vast variety of being able to do that ideation where your prompts are being generated. We've trained on over 2 million games, and lots of current games. So you're gonna, and if you can generate 100 concepts in literally a matter of minutes, so to speak, and then find the ones you are. That's challenging to do if you're just doing it manually, right?
Yeah.
And after a couple hour brainstorming session, you get a little bit tired. People used to say, the idea is the easy thing, and it's all about the execution, which obviously has merit. But the idea actually is super important to be well developed, well researched, and confirming that it has a chance of being successful.
Yeah, I think also it's really important to, no matter how many ideas you start out with, is to just throw things at them, try and get as many people to look at it, and get as many questions like probed in around it as possible. And like you say, when you sit around a table with a team, you tend to all, especially when you're like all like kind of friendly or whatever, or you've worked together before, you kind of know each other's ways of thinking and stuff. You can end up in this little bit of a bubble, and you can end up being quite agreeable with your peer group, and you end up with like what feels like in the room with all the energy of everyone being like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool." Like you're kind of bigging each other up, and it's very easy to end up with an idea that really isn't stress tested in any way. And the second
a little bit more groupthink. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the second you put it out there, obviously, and people start asking questions, you then go, "Oh yeah, we didn't think about that," because everyone was going, "Yeah, no, it's cool."
And again, I mean, obviously, it's an age-old way of how ideas and concepts are generated. So there's huge validity to it, and you have to get it with your group. But these tools do help accelerate and broaden that process, and that's really what we're saying. It's I mean, you still have to judge the idea on its merits, and so what if you have 100 versions of it? If you're not able to filter through and determine which one has most likely the best chance, then you're still stuck at the same place of risking failure.
So you've been working in the AI space for quite a while now. What would you say?
Relatively speaking, yeah. I guess so.
Yeah, as much as you can be in the with how long AI has been around. What would you say are some of the most common misconceptions around AI, especially around AI in game development?
Sure. There's several, and I can say with some um, experience, because we get these inquiries on a regular basis, and or you can, we can see from Google searches, right? If the people are trying to find out, and the number one thing is, the number one search is AI generated game, for certain. Really, the concept of, oh, I push the button and out comes the game. By choosing, fully packaged and ready to roll. So when people talk about AI game generation, or we generate, full back. I mean, it's either a super narrow use case of like a platformer game that is very template driven, but there is no AI game engine out there now. There might be. I know people, or I know companies that are tempting to do that. But the fact that the AI does all the work for you, and that it's sort of some magic box, right? That it's that the AI is thinking. I mean, all it is algorithms and statistics and data, right? And so you're training these models, but how you're training them is based on what goes into them, and we train on lots of open source models, and so what we do is fine tune it specifically for games. So we're not trying to do anything else. We are totally focused on helping game developers make the best games possible using these new AI tools. But misperceptions are definitely thinking that the AI can think for itself, generate the game for you, just do much more than it can, and it can't. Sort of the AGI, which is the artificial general intelligence, which lots of people are working on, but I think it'll be a while.
Yeah, I think that that's probably part of the problem with how we've come about on AI, and that is that um, I don't think realistically we can think of any of it as intelligence. Like, it doesn't do anything on its own. It's still a program that needs input in order to run a thing to produce an output, which is something that we've had for a long time with computers and software. I think that some of this, especially as there's a lot of people out there that are using AI to brand their product, when actually it's further away from AI than what most of people are considering AI currently. So it's a real hard space to operate in. And yeah, I think it's probably quite easy for all of these misconceptions to come around with people, especially people who are using it for the fear mongering and saying, "Oh, it's going to steal your job," whereas in a majority of the cases, it's just another tool for you to put in the toolbox of you doing your job.
Yeah, and it is more than just obviously data analysis, because the broad ability for it to create new connections within the models, and so it is like when you're using the ideation tool, it's putting together things that hadn't been put together before in terms of new concepts, but it is, as you said, based on all of what's gone into it to date, and the models obviously, and the LLMs and are getting very powerful. I equate it, as you said, in terms of the fear mongering and the job loss, etc. I mean, I equate it to sort of where the internet was in the mid to late '90s, in terms of everyone heard of it. Websites were out there. There's some successful companies. You could ignore it. Certainly in your industry, you could ignore it, but it just is. It's going to impact most industries that you can think of, in the positive, negative. And so what we always say is just get smart on understanding the tools, and whatever your industry is, just try and see what's impact it might have, because it's going to be there. And I think there's lots of hype, certainly, about expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw, or you probably heard NVIDIA's results yesterday, but there's lots of reality that people are spending and building and getting great results from it. So the job losses, not to go too long on that, but I think they're just like the internet when that came about. Certain professions did experience loss of jobs, but then new professions sprang from
Yeah.
the opportunity that the internet afforded, and it'll be similar for AI. So
I think that's a really solid comparison, actually, because when you think about it, when those of us who are old enough to remember, and the internet was coming around, and everyone was like, "Oh, we'll be able to shop online," like before we could actually shop online, before it became the most normal thing in the world to shop online,
yeah,
and everyone was like, "Shops, high street shops aren't going to exist. You're not people are going to stop going places to buy things. It's going to be we're going to see everyone's going to lose their jobs."
the death of brick and mortar, right? It was always brick and mortars
Yeah,
going out. So
and that hasn't happened. Like
no,
there was
no.
obviously it was a big shake-up. There was a lot of impact, and over time, more and more stores, went online. And even now, you do get people who just create their store online only. But like you say, it actually created the whole other new marketplace, um, and where people like you and I can actually just set up a website and start selling stuff and creating stuff on a website. So I do
But
think that's a really good example.
and the stores adopted too. I mean, to stick with that analogy, maybe the big box stores had to adjust. Maybe stores became more specialty driven, and there's a combination of order online, pick it up in the store. I mean, all of those
Yeah,
types of things. So yeah, you're right. Those who survived certainly adapted. And there's a famous story of when Amazon first came out, and the booksellers, obviously everyone from Barnes and Noble, and at least in the U.S. and other bookstores, poo-pooed it. And I think there was even an offer to buy Amazon early on, but they said no one's going to buy books online, type of thing. But then some specialty stores did, focus on just a particular niche and got lots of walk-in traffic. But the big boxes that didn't adapt,
mm.
have had trouble.
Yeah.
So
So is there in and around all of this? There is the ethical and legal considerations. What do you think are the most important, like ethical and legal considerations for game developers to keep in mind when they're implementing AI tools into their projects?
yeah, and it's. I mean, I will obviously say from the start, I'm not offering any type of legal opinion, and not
Yeah,
a lawyer in any
none of
sense.
this will be
So
legal, sort of legal.
yeah,
Always secret aware. Yeah,
but like like anything, the technology has sort of outpaced the legal framework,
mm.
right? And I mean, it's just exploded. Certainly, I mean, as we said, we started this 4 years ago, and the first couple of years was just explaining what AI was and overcoming skepticism about will it have any impact. And then really what did a lot of the work for us was when Chat GPT came out, and that just exploded in terms of public consciousness. And then it was the awareness of like, wow, this is here, this is going to happen. And so, how will it affect my job, and et cetera. I think from a legal standpoint, from the copyright issues, I mean, there's lots of fair use cases. There's lots of open source cases. I mean, obviously, you probably heard about this OpenAI and Scarlett Johansson voice
Mm-hmm.
chatbot that it probably has a strong case that, I mean, you can't directly just copy outright,
Yeah,
but if you're training on millions and millions of data points to, as an artist, say, hey, that little piece looks exactly like a dragon I once drew for art, that's a full-on copy. I mean, that's pretty challenging to prove, I think.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, there will be some both in the EU and the US and elsewhere, there'll be some legal implications, frameworks, etc. But I think the difference is, just like they tried to regulate, the internet. I mean, what does that mean, right? But there are certain things, privacy laws that have come out, which are good for consumers.
mm.
The ability to opt out and data sharing. All that's good, but the internet is still, obviously, very broadly speaking, thriving. And I think AI tools, models, etc., will be in a similar situation.
Yeah.
So
I think the most powerful thing that I don't hear too many people talking about when it comes to, especially around like AI art, and it's stealing jobs, it's stealing people's work, is that the copyright laws around AI generated art, which is that it can't be copyrighted. So if someone was purely to try and make a game using nothing but AI generated art, then they have no copyright protection over that art. So someone else could very literally copy that same art and make a clone of that game very easily. I say very easily. It's never actually very easy to make a clone of a game, but depending on the game. So there's a lot of protection.
And also the art is an art example. I mean, when you're generating the art images, etc., and you're iterating, I mean, it always is changing slightly, because that's kind of the black box part of the AI, is that it's not just repeating exactly as it's building out. So you're always getting a slightly different version. So yeah, it is difficult to your point, to copy exactly someone else's, but there's probably less protection in that regard. So we'll see how this plays out, but and there already have been court cases, certainly amongst the bigger players. I mean, I think that's part of it, as well as the Googles, the Metas, the Microsofts are the ones who are going to be at the tip of the spear in terms of these legal cases, and what happens to them filters down certainly through the rest of the industry, or the smaller players, right?
Yeah. And I do think that, although the legal system is kind of slightly behind, I do think it will catch up, and it will catch up fairly quickly. Well, reasonably quickly, as quick as they can catch up. And it will change and evolve over time, and there'll be lots of agreements and disagreements on how we should operate with these things. So one of the big questions I get asked when it comes to using AI, especially within game development, is how it can be used to improve player experiences without compromising creativity or originality. Do you have any thoughts on this kind of area where AI might be used to improve player experiences?
I mean, sure, and I'm sure you have similar thoughts and answers when people ask you the question. But well, taking an in-game experience, right? A lot of work is being done and funding around the role of NPCs, and having much more interesting. I mean, I play Skyrim, and the menu of the dialogue with the NPCs is always the same thing, and even with mods, they can improve it. But I mean, it would be pretty interesting, I think, for some of these. It doesn't even have to be a big open world game. It could just be even smaller casual style games. To every time you interacted with a different character, you got different experience or dialogue based on maybe what was happening in the game at the time, and that creates sort of an endless type of interesting type of gameplay experience. There'll be personalization, certainly. That's one of the things that that AI tools will help to create. There'll be level generation and variation dynamically, and that a lot of that also is being worked on. So I think from an experience standpoint for gamers in these games, I think the AI has and is and will create a lot of variety, a lot of new types of experience on the fly, which would be cool. So yeah, I think everyone's looking forward to that. You get your favorite game, and you put in 50 or 100 hours, and you're sort of like, okay, I've sort of done this. But you love the game, and maybe go back to it in a different, character, or whatever. It would be neat to, and it'll happen. These games will, be reborn, so to speak, and have endless new characters and variety to them.
Yeah, I think you're right there, especially with things like where you have games where you can play again, but as a different character, and yes, you can set that character with different abilities and stuff, but largely the experience that player has from external, like NPCs, will always be the same conversations that you just had. Obviously there are some games where they've managed to eke out slightly different paths if you're a different character, but I think that kind of dynamic move would be great to see in games.
I think that the in-world folks And yeah, they're probably the at least the best funded group that's focusing on that.
Yeah.
And we've chatted with them, and yeah, I'm excited to see. Hopefully they can pull it off.
Um, in what ways do you think? And this is something that I'm really interested in starting. Well, not starting, but like helping with the movement of AI. In what ways do you think we can shift the conversation in our industry? Well, obviously, conversations like this help to move away from like the scaremongering about AI and to highlight its actual benefits to the game developer community.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I attend a fair number of conferences and speak at some of them, and the message is, I always say the same message is that, I mean, it's from a scaremongering standpoint. I mean, the tools, the models, they're here. They're getting better and better. And more and more people are using them. And so I think I say just get smart on understanding if you're a 3D artist or a graphic designer, or you're the actual developer, or you're the project lead or whatever. Get smart on what these tools can and cannot do for your team, your own role, and some things may or may not work, and but they're going to be here, and they're only getting more impactful. And so I guess I always say, sort of ignore them at your own peril, because it's sort of like going back to our internet. Yeah, you can ignore it, but I don't think it's super wise. But again, it's human plus the AI, and that's what I also emphasize. And it's you're always going to need the curator, the editor, the creator, and a lot of these tools just help do the work that maybe wasn't as glamorous. It was more tedious. It was, and so all of a sudden now I've got all these variety of whatever artwork that I want to do, and it would have taken me weeks before, if I was a 3D artist, to generate all these custom. Now I have them all relatively short amount of time, and now I can choose the ones that I think have great potential and fine tune those, or maybe I take my own skills and now those are the ones I work on. So, yeah. Job loss, as I said before, of course there'll be some job loss. I think it would be naive to say there isn't. If you're a small studio and all of a sudden you got some tools that help create a lot of the art or even the concepts or the icons of things, you have that for X price and only getting better, and you're saying, well, otherwise I was going to hire 2 more people to do the same thing. I mean, what you want to do is you keep your existing team and add the tools for them to use. Especially for smaller companies where the dollars are, studios where the dollars are tight to begin with, right? And I think that's one of the benefits of these tools is it begins to democratize a lot of the way that games are going to be developed, and that in the realm of the AAA studios and the vast resources they have in their own game engines and all their art teams, and not that a team of 5 will equate to that, but it will allow you to sort of, as you say, punch above your weight. You'll be able to do the work of a larger studio equivalently, and or create more games or variations of the game. So that would be my message, is just you can't ignore it, just get smart on it. It's not a fad, despite what legislation may happen. It's not going to just get legislated or regulated out of existence. I mean, there's too many companies and individuals, right? It would be one thing if Microsoft or Meta had this as a closed model and they were the only ones who had it, and they had the keys and the walled garden and everything like that. So nobody else could access. But everything's been open source. Open source is the fastest growing part of all of this. And so anybody can take it and use it. Well, I mean, that's a great thing.
I totally agree. I think also there's an interesting point that you touched on there, which is because there's not a lot of funding for, well, there is funding, there's not a lot of funding for indie studios, and so we're always working to like a tight budget. We're always trying to squeeze and do the best that we can with minimum to, in a lot of cases, no money. Whereas a studio that has these like AI tools that allow them to do, like I say, work as a larger studio, it will put them in a situation where it's actually going to be, it might flip it a little bit on the investors to be like, actually, if you want to invest in me and my studio, what are you going to bring to the table? Because we don't need your cash to improve our workflow. We don't need, we've got all of these extra powers now with AI tools.
Yeah.
We don't need you for all of this. So what are investors actually going to be able to bring to the table in order to support a studio and to, yeah, I think it might actually shake up the investment space for us a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, you make a great point, and we have this discussion quite a bit with our users, and was at a conference earlier this week, and that was widely discussed. And I totally believe it. That's our focus is actually on the solo devs, the small studios, the hobbyists, even the students, the academics, because it's just what we're finding. The feedback we're getting is that games are, an art form, a creative expression, and more people who play games, especially with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, want to create their own game, even if they don't have all the coding skills and etc. And this whole concept when we talk about user generated content is exploding, and not just on the Roblox ecosystem and Minecraft, etc. But people want to play, even if it's a small game. Not everything has to be Monopoly Go.
Yeah,
God bless them. I mean, but you might just want it for the creative experience, and so I think you're right. It's going to be huge. It could well flip the investing scenario. I think there's only so many AAA studios out there with their multi-billion-dollar, multi-year game projects. But all of these games that are being developed and spread out, I think these sort of next couple of years will be looked back upon as a sort of a sea change in terms of the little guy, so to speak, the individual or the small studio with these democratized type of tools will be able to create outstanding, AA, AAA type of experiences if they want to, and not break the bank. And I think that shakes a lot of things up. It's exciting.
Yeah, I've been saying for a little while that I feel like this is our industry's version of a bushfire. Like, there's a lot of stuff. We've lost like 10% of publishers and investors. There's been huge layoffs for months now. There's been lots of all of this coming from all of the acquisitions that happened. There's what we're calling obviously the COVID hangover, where we thought everyone's spending money on games, it's gonna last forever, and it just didn't. But what it's done is it's put a whole it's created a whole new playing field. And there's a lot of people who used to be working in a studio that probably aren't going to want to go back to working in a studio. I know some people who got laid off, got a new job, and then 2 weeks later got laid off again, and
that's brutal.
And so they were like, I'm out. Like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And so they're banding together with some friends, and they're going to form their own studio. And I think the indies this year and over the next couple of years is going to be a space that grows quite substantially. And the big studios, everyone's already talking about. There's no real big hits come out recently. There's like, where's the next big game? Everyone's kind of either bored of the stuff that's coming out, or there's been massive delays for games that are the next version of the same thing that we saw before. So I think it's an interesting time.
Well, I mean, everyone's, GTA 6, and, I mean, that's like, you're right. I mean, there's been, as I said, there's been tons of 2s and 3s and 4s of the existing hit game, right? Just the follow-ons. And so I think the creativity is with the small studios and the user-generated type of games. Also, another big thing is how and where games get distributed. I think that's beginning to get shaken up a bit in terms of not just especially as a small studio. The publishing model, could be called into question as well as just the app stores, right? HTML5 games
Hmm.
are, being just pushed right to the browser. Those styles games. There's
Yeah.
a article I read recently about where are the next billion gamers coming from, and talk about the growth of game studios in Africa, and the fact that even smartphones aren't that prevalent. So they're creating different styles of games, mini games,
Yeah.
social media style games. TikTok's starting to become a platform in which games are being literally put right onto the platform. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of changes, which all speaks to the ability for the smaller players, as I always say, like the literally down to the solo dev, who's wearing all the hats, has the opportunity to actually earn a living of some type from what they're creating, because a lot of the barriers have come down that had all these artificial costs in place.
Yeah, that's very true. So, what would be your like top bit of advice for new game developers who are interested in leveraging AIs? Like where, especially those who are like unsure where to even start.
Well, you start with Ludo. That's what we always say.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So, um, but seriously, I think if you're a young game developer designer, well, I mean, a couple of things. What kind of game? What's your passion? So understanding, whether it's genre. I mean, there's lots of education games now. There's lots of different styles of games, and understanding what are the tools. I mean, the tools are developing so quickly that you really, even compared to 5 years ago, or even less than that, don't have to be an expert coder anymore. For example, I mean, there's script generation capability, and choose your game engine wisely, and how you're building that. Obviously Unity, lots of changes going on there, and other game engines are springing up, including like BuildBox, and so I think there's two things. There's greater opportunity for an indie, but also it is that much more difficult to get heard above the noise, right? I mean, because there's so many people coming in, there's content saturation, and so you really got to pick an area that can gain some expertise at, and try and build it that. We've talked to some folks who are using AI for a specific type of puzzle games, and they're just cranking on puzzle, and they're becoming totally focused and experts in the puzzle genre, on mobile, and using AI tools to enhance that experience. And that's an interesting way of applying it. So you can't be all things to all people.
Yeah.
So you know choose, but it's a great time. uh, Obviously the layoffs, there's 10,500 already this year and 10,000 last year, right? I mean, just brutal. It's a great time, maybe not to join a traditional studio, but it's a great time to develop content. Like, go on to Roblox and see how dynamic that whole ecosystem is,
Hmm.
and the types of games you can. And as I said, I think the founder said, expect in 5 years there could be a $1 billion game coming out of Roblox, which is pretty insane.
That would be crazy.
So embrace the new media, and look what TikTok's doing. Look at. I think you want to put yourself at the edge, because if you're going to jump into this, it's moving so quickly that you want to see what are the cutting edge types of tools and platforms out there.
Yeah, makes complete sense. So tell us, where can we find Ludo online? Where can we find you online?
Sure. So we're at Ludo.ai, Ludo.ai. And that's the best place to start, we believe, and that's why we're building this company. Is everything I've just said. The small studio developer, hobbyist, student who wants to learn how to create games. And the best place to start is what's the concept, and how do you do research, and how do you create a game design document, all those things, to get you to where you're going to actually begin to prototype. And so, yeah, you can find us there, and we're active on all the social media channels. So Ludo Ludo.ai is the best place to find us.
Perfect. But how did you come up with the name Ludo?
Ludo is a very good friend's dog, and
Nice.
hi Jackie. And Ludo actually is Latin for to play, so ludum. So it's
Ah,
to play. So it kind of works, and it's also a nice short name, which is always very helpful.
yeah.
You
Tippy
know, when
tap, tippy
people
tap.
are trying to find you. So yeah, so that's how we came up, and we like it, and I believe it's a pretty popular board game in India as well. I've never played it, but we're, and that's just Ludo. So we're Ludo AI.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So thanks everyone for listening. This has been your Game Dev Local podcast episode. Obviously, we drop a new episode every Monday. You can find out more about us by visiting gamedevlocal.com, or you can find everything there basically. And me, as always, Stuart De Ville online, Stuart De Ville everywhere. Quick Google, you find me. And yeah, thanks, Tom.
Stuart, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate it, and hope to speak with you again. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.